Hello, everybody, and welcome back to the Bundesliga Show. The final, well, not the final show, the almost final show. We are back this evening to do the season review of the Bundesliga, the big one, the one that you've all been looking for. Well, depending on how your season finished for your particular team. Tuning in tonight with Peter. Peter, how's it going this evening?
Good to see you. We had a most interesting season to review, and we're going to go through all 18 clubs this year with our grades and our top performers. So looking forward to it very much.
Yeah, absolutely. I think that's the first intro video that I've mistimed as well, where we popped onto the screen first. So I'm annoyed to finish the season like that. What a shame. Anyway, yeah, as Peter alluded to, tonight we are going to review each and every one of the 18 Bundesliga sides that took part in the 2022-23 season. We'll be giving them a grade from A to E or F. Depending on if you're American or using the American grading scale. So me and Peter might slightly vary in that sense. And yeah, we'll give a player of the season award to each team as well. So I'll kind of lead off from the bottom of the table going upwards. So I'm going to be starting with 18th place Hertha, and then I'll lead on it. Then Peter will go 17th, and we'll flip around that way. Obviously, before we do get started, please do first and foremost make sure to smash a like on the video for our big review show. It's taken me absolutely forever to do the research for this, so just give me a like for the sake of that. Comment along. Obviously, let us know what you think. If you've got questions, let us know if you agree, disagree with our grades. Are we being too harsh? Defend your team, whatever you like. You know, all comments are always welcome, as per usual. And of course, press the red button to subscribe to the channel. Right, time is probably going to be against us during the majority of this show because we've got so much to get through. So I shall just crack on basically. And what we'll do is then I'll start off with my grading for Hertha. So I've gone for an E. Peter, just tell me what your grading was to start with, and then I'll give a bit of ad lib as to why I've given them an E.
I have given Hertha a C- based on the fact that I believe they made a very bold administrative change in January that will benefit them in the Zweite Bundesliga.
Okay, interesting. So yeah, I mean, I've given Hertha an E. It feels like the Berlin side had this relegation coming for the last few seasons. For me, in terms of this season, so they conceded the third most league goals with 69. You know, that's obviously a poor foundation for any club getting going. Obviously, the changes in the starting 11 often kind of left me feeling that they were unsure as to what they were doing. The fullbacks never offering too much confidence. And then going further up the pitch, you never felt there was too much confidence. And forwards never really came up with the goods. Duque and Gankam, Kanga, getting Jovetic on the pitch was a struggle. Their away form was absolutely woeful. Their home form only just perked up as the season went on. There was obviously the administrative changes, what Peter has alluded to. Freddie Bobic obviously exited his post, and then they brought in Pal Dardai to try and save the sinking ship, which, you know, it worked to a certain extent, and glad to see that he'll be staying with the club actually in the Zweite Bundesliga. So yeah, it just felt like a bit of a calamity of the season, and yeah, and so I'll move on. But generally speaking, I just don't think that Hertha ever got off the ground with their season. Started off with a Berlin derby loss, and it never got too much better after that. Their best player award I'm going to give to Dodi Lukebakio. So with 11 goals and 3 assists, playing 32 times, so in 32 appearances, scored some crucial goals, and a massive improvement for him as a player of 2 goals and 2 assists. The previous season, I think he was probably Hertha's strongest player. A couple of other shout outs maybe to Richter and Toussaint as well. So, Peter, then do you want to summarize in a few sentences your best player for Hertha and just a few little points on them before you move on to Schalke?
Absolutely. I will actually pick one of your honorable mentions. I believe that Lucas Toussaint was the most valuable player for this team. Luka Bacchio scored many goals, as we've discussed many times on the pod, because he was the lone penalty taker. And the reason that I grade Hertha on average is I believe that the bold course correction by K. Bernstein to release Freddy Bobic and install Benjamin Weber during the last days of the January transfer window has put this club on a good foundation for the future, as has reinstalling Pal Dardai, the true club man, who I believe will help them out in the second flight. A quick update on the licensing issue with Hertha, as they were granted an extension yesterday by the DFL. The DFL is mostly satisfied with their paperwork. They're still waiting on some clarification from the 777 consortium. And all the DFL basically wants to know is whether or not they can close a 20 million euro liquidity gap before the summer is out, which I believe they can with certain sales, and B, if they can get a it's a shame we don't have Rune with us to explain what a Nordic bond is, but if they can get an extension on their Nordic bond, as the name implies, it's a bond that is issued by our Scandinavian neighbors up north, Danish investors, Swedish investors involved as well. They should get an extension on that. They should get their license, and I would fancy their chances in the second flight next year. That affords us a lovely segue into Schalke, which will also be completely competing in the second Bundesliga next year. And in this case, I was also somewhat generous with my grading and graded them with a C- as well for the administrative moves, namely bringing in Thomas Reis, firing Reuven Schröder, Peter Knebel coming in and working as the acting sporting director. And doing an excellent job swinging some loans in the January transfer period. All 8 of them are headed back, of course. Now that the team has been relegated. But I give them a C- based on the fact that they never quite gave up. They really played an excellent Rückrunde and very nearly achieved the impossible in avoiding relegation. And that was in large part due to Rice's solid coaching. The MVP for me for Schalke is not a hard choice. It is Marius Bülter, who played an excellent season and even found himself in the mood to turn some tricks with his goal in the last Schalke victory. I think his first one did just a beautiful scissor move there. And your thoughts on Schalke? I imagine you've graded them a little bit less harshly, or a little bit harshly, I would say.
So slightly less harshly than Hertha. I've gone with a D for Schalke, just based on the fact that I feel obviously the objective was to avoid relegation, and they've fallen just short of that. So therefore, they can't have a passing grade of a C for me. If you were to split it up between the Hinrunde and the Rückrunde, then you'd have 2 complete opposite grades as well. So yeah, completely agree with what you said, Peter. I think I've also noted the January incomings that were really important. Mercedes Jens that we've enjoyed covering, really, really important. Frey as well up top offered them something slightly different. Overall, ultimately, Schalke will be disappointed. They couldn't quite pull off the miracle. Thomas Reis coming in was hugely important. I agree with that. My MVP or player of the season for them was indeed Marius Bülter. 11 goals, 1 assist in 33 appearances. So he's there for the whole season, more or less. A really big effort. He got more and more confident as the season went on for me, as you say, throwing in some step overs and scoring fine goals. And maybe, probably honourable mention to Jens, who came in obviously in January, so doesn't get the vote because he played less games. Salazar probably would have been up there again if he played as many games because he was a creative spark than I thought. Okie doke, moving swiftly on to VfB Stuttgart, who came in 16th and avoided relegation via the relegation playoff match, 6-1 aggregate victory. And yeah, so my grading is a C. Sorry, a C minus. C minus for my team. Ultimately, you know, a season that was defined across the last few months of the season, but that's what would be remembered. But we can't, however, forget what came before and what led Stuttgart into said position. I think is really important, actually. After quite a promising opening day 1-1 draw with RB Leipzig, maybe Stuttgart fans would have been thinking, okay, yeah, maybe not as a troubling season as the season before. But lo and behold, after that, the team struggled to get over the line. They would often be in matches and would often be in the contest. They were rarely blown away, I felt, but ultimately forgot how to win. And obviously that's a crucial factor. Obviously, as the season went on, Pellegrino Matarazzo was let go in October. Then we saw Wimmer come in for a short while, and then the fireman Bruno Labbadia was brought in as well, which his firefighting skills were slightly out of practice and couldn't quite do the job for VfB. There are obviously a couple of coaching easy fixes that, you know, we've spoken about on many shows, bringing in Wagnerman into his natural position, releasing Anton from that horrible right back position, just quick and easy fixes really. And it started to show for the squad and they started to get back going. Obviously the other big thing was scoring goals. The team struggled massively when Guirassy wasn't fit, and how lucky were they that Guirassy was such a good impact signing anyhow. If he wasn't and he struggled like Pfeiffer, for example, would have been miles away, really. So that leads me to the best player for Stuttgart across the also the goalkeeping crisis for me was just really poor, and Muller and Bredlow just did not cut the mustard at all. I'm finding it hard between Guirassy and Endo. I found they both played off each other so well. Endo trying to find Guirassy with those advancing passes. So I want to sit on the fence basically. So Peter, I'll hand over to you to give them your grade and your best player as well.
Yes. In this case, I did accord a D minus, and that was because of the administrative disarray. I think Alexander Werle barely pulled it off, and he took a huge risk with signing Hoeneß to that 2-year contract. Imagine if they had been relegated after all. Just like you, I was torn between Endo and Guirassy as the MVP. Unfortunately, the fact that Guirassy was not fit for the entire season, it really had to be the samurai for me, as they call him in the Badische Neueste Nachrichten here. He was definitely my my MVP. And congratulations to you. I don't believe I've had an opportunity to congratulate you in person just yet for the Swabians. So hopefully when you come down to the Bundesrepublik next season, we'll be attending. We'll have the privilege of attending some top flight matches.
Absolutely.
This, of course, brings us to the team that defied my brilliant prediction of actually being the team that was in the relegation playoff, and that is FC Augsburg, the Fuggerstädter. We can perhaps call them Mark's FC Augsburg, since he is based in Bavaria, and that is the most nearby team. In this case, I do accord failing marks because I believe that the team that Stefan Reuter put together on the back of 2 really big transfer windows was poorly hashed out, and I believe Enrico Maassen really was his 4-4-2 system faltered towards the end, and I wish that he had done some more sensible tactical alterations. So I was surprised that they're going to stick with him for another season, or at least that's the word. I've heard nothing about his potential dismissal. I think this side underachieved massively. And that's why I accorded my first, actually, I believe my only set of failing marks. The MVP for Augsburg has to be the resurgent German international Mergim Berisha, who was hurt towards the end of the campaign. That is most unfortunate. And I was interested to learn that he might potentially be on the move. Looks like Augsburg, having just signed him permanently, are looking to offload him already and perhaps take Mathis Tell from Bayern on loan.
Yeah.
So yes, he was the MVP, even though Demirovic had a greater impact in terms of scorer points. And we all love the story of Arne Engels, even if he wilted towards the end of the season as well. But I'll turn it over to you to get your grades and MVP for Augsburg.
Yeah, I went with a C- for Augsburg. So I guess you can say they just about achieved their objective of, as you say, Peter, they've had a couple of big transfer windows now, and the fact that in my head all I ever think about with Augsburg is you want to survive, you want to survive. So maybe they've moved away from that thinking, especially if you're an Augsburg fan. Then yeah, it would be a fail grade to have just stayed up, and ultimately, as you say, they fell off the cliff towards the end of the season. And they were very fortunate to not come in the relegation playoff place, because Stuttgart probably should have beaten Hoffenheim, and therefore, yeah, your prediction, Peter, would have come to the fore. And yeah, who knows what would have happened in that matchup. Yeah, I chose Berisha as well as my player of the season for Augsburg. I think he had the biggest impact when he wasn't in the team. I think you saw their performances drop off quite clearly. So yeah, easy one for me. A couple of highlights for Augsburg, I guess, with the Bavarian derby win over Bayern, which kind of gave them a little bit of a lift at times. But yeah, they often had a habit of throwing leads at one point. They got into a bad habit in that sense. Often getting players sent off at the wrong time as well. So only winning one game of their last 11 could have, put them into all sorts of muddiness. So they got away with it in the end, shall we say. Moving on to a side that leapfrogged them and Stuttgart on the last day of the season was Bochum, who I'm going to give a grading of a C. So again, pass mark for Bochum. For me, again, their objective is to stay in the Bundesliga. But to have done this with the worst defense from a goal scoring point of view, so letting in the most amount of goals in the Bundesliga, and to escape on the last day and do a great escape, for me, it might not have compared as much to Schalke's if they pulled it off, but this still, for me, is a great escape. It was a massively underwhelming start to the season as well. Let's not forget that, which put them into all sorts of trouble. They didn't get their first win until match week 9 against Frankfurt, and they eventually got used to things. Obviously, there was the mess that unfolded with Thomas Reis and the club. Couldn't agree a contract, and he was let go. Obviously, eventually bringing in Thomas Lech, who I think did a fine job overall. So, good appointment in that sense. They then used a very strong home form to really boost their chances of survival. I think they at one point went 6 unbeaten at home, which of course was really important. Their away form didn't follow as quickly, but they also added a more attacking threat to their game as well. I felt as the season went on, and that leads me on to my best player of the season for them. I went for Christopher Antwi Ajay or Ajay. I thought the wide man just was one of their biggest attacking threats for the season. Offered something different on the break. Obviously, had the long throw in, which was really, was a real tool for them as throughout the season as well. Caused carnage in defense, in opposition boxes, and would lead to goals. I thought he was really important in that. Obviously, his tally of 3 goals and 6 assists, so 9 goal contributions overall. Is his best to date in the Bundesliga so far. So a player clearly improving with age. So yeah, I had to give it to him. I'll throw out 2 other honourable mentions, which might come into Peter's thinking. I thought Hoffmann was very good, and Stoiger as well. So Peter, over to you for your grading and your players as well.
Well, it is my great pleasure to give Bochum an A. For vindicating me. I think I was the only prognosticator at the beginning of the season that I'm aware of who did not tip Bochum to be relegated. And the reason for that is obviously clear. If you're a fan of the Transfermarkt listings, you can look it up. Bochum have an estimated at the beginning of the season, it was even worse. I think they had the lowest cumulative estimated squad worth at something like 40 million euros. And by comparison, Schalke had 60 million, Hertha had close to 100 million. The things have been adjusted slightly now, but Bochum are still the league's least valued squad. And to me, I didn't think that they were going to factor into this relegation race. And one of the reasons was Kevin Stöger. I thought that was a solid signing. And he did make one of my honorable mentions, as did Philipp Hoffmann, who, yes, of course, I'm broadcasting here from Karlsruhe, so I'm slightly biased. My father's club is Karlsruhe. And Philipp Hoffmann is, well, he still enjoys a great deal of support here in KA, and my father's a fan of him as well. My MVP for Bochum at the end of the day was Anthony Lucia, who played something of an inconsistent campaign, but the 37-year-old midfield maestro, the Capitano, was very important.
Yeah.
He did play a 6. He played as an 8. And I really like the look of this Bochum squad from the beginning. I like Thomas Reis as a trainer. It was unfortunate to see him let go early in the season, but Lech, I think, did a decent job, as you mentioned yourself. So I'm proud to accord an A to the 1848ers for proving all of the other prognosticators wrong. Everybody tipped them to finish last. And they did not. And I think they deserve a great deal of respect for that. Even their sometimes poorly behaved fans deserve a deal of respect for look, there's great passion in the Wohlpott. There absolutely is. That does lead us to a team that were also tipped for relegation by several others. This is a team I sincerely doubt either one of us is going to spend a great deal of time on. SV Werder Bremen got the job done by avoiding relegation in their first season back at the top flight. Ole Werner ran a 3-5-2 system all season long. And while we, of course, can have an honorable mention for Marvin Duksch or perhaps even Maximilian Philippe, who came in, who actually did some good work late in the season, the MVP has to be Niklas Füllkrug, who is not only one of the greatest stories in German football, but also the greatest story for the German national team, the Lücke himself. Werder Bremen get an A for me for doing the job and avoiding relegation. They can be somewhat disappointed, I suppose, that they ultimately ended up finishing 13th, and there wasn't a great deal of consistency in the rest of the squad. Yeah. But Füllkrug and Duksch later on in the campaign were stories of the season for German football. I have a hunch you agree with me on this one, yes?
Yeah, so I gave the A grading for achieving their goal in really fine style. I thought Ole Werner's brand of football was really entertaining to watch. They gave so many brilliant moments. I have to throw in the 3-2 win at Dortmund, 2-0 down and scoring those 3 ridiculously late goals. Using the win backs, Weiser, fantastic. And yeah, best player, Niklas Füllkrug, great story. And the partnership between he and Dusch was really enjoyable, because you don't often see these partnerships anymore because of the formations we often see being played. I thought they played off each other superbly. And top goal scorer or joint top goal scorer for Füllkrug, of course. Sharing it with Nkunku means, absolutely best player. Superb achievement for Werder. They were, really entertaining to watch. And I also did say in my notes, 13th almost feels like a false position because it feels like they were mid-table cruising for a long time and their performances didn't seem to drop off, but the results did at the end of the season quite clearly. But absolutely well done to Werder for their achievements this season. Brings me on to Hoffenheim, who where we might start to get some more schneid and stingy grading going on here. I've given Hoffenheim a D. I think ultimately a squad with the quality within it finishing 12th is a failure. It has to be said. Starting the season, with 4 wins from 6, everyone was probably thinking this is European football contention quite clearly, and was on the cards. Obviously, at the time, Andre Breitenreiter was in charge, but their form soon did dip between September and March. They're actually winless for that long period. Obviously, we had the World Cup break and winter break in between. They shot down to the bottom of the league at one stage, and then obviously the manager swap comes Pellegrino Matarazzo. His impact was not immediate, but he did get the job done. He got Hoffenheim out of trouble, barring a mathematic improbability they were safe by the last day of the season. Obviously, getting the draw 1-1 with Stuttgart clearly saw that they would do so. But overall, I just think that a club like Hoffenheim, with the backing that they've got and the money that they've had invested into the squad, being involved in a relegation race is severely poor. So best player for me, I've found this one tricky, and it feels like a bit of a cop-out, me going for a Andre Kramaric. But despite an underwhelming season, he still managed to bag 12 goals, 3 assists. And it's kind of the opposite to his season last year. He was more of an assist provider than he was a goal scorer. Across the season, 15 goal involvements. He only missed 2 games, showing his importance to the squad. And honourable, just about shout-outs to Baumgartner, who is a classy player. Obviously, his form came on, and Kabak looked like a really good signing to start with. I think his form dipped off a little bit as well. So over to you, Peter, for your summaries on Hoffenheim.
Yes, well, I give them a D plus based on the fact that they did pull themselves off the ropes, Muhammad Ali style. Let's not forget that Matarazzo was saved by a 3-1 win over Hertha on match day 25. Had he not won that match, not only would Matarazzo have been sacked, but Alexander Rosen, this club sporting director, was going to be sacked as well. I think Kenan Kocak had a plane ticket and everything. It was they were absolutely. You already covered, of course, why Hoffenheim's season was a failure with the type of roster that they have, with the type of financial backing that they have. I obviously could not go with Kramaric, although it's important to note that Matarazzo did interject new life into Kramaric, using him as a buttressing support striker. My MVP is quite biased. I write an Americans in the Bundesliga Deep Scout column, and it was my great pleasure to watch John Anthony Brooks. Really, after a very poor initial 5-6 matches, he was having great trouble after his brief stint there at Benfica, where he was mostly on the bench, getting back into the Bundesliga groove. But he did it. He captained that defensive line. He was flicking. He was doing all sorts of cheeky things with that wonderful bald head of his, including those lovely headers back to the keeper. Hopefully, everybody got a chance to see a few of those. You don't see that very often in football, period. But I love my American, who is a Berliner. I mean, he's a German, but he is one of those players whom Well, as a mixed heritage man myself, and also somebody who believes that the soldier sons are the perfect pacifist vision of the post-war Bundesrepublik, obviously I had to go with John Anthony Brooks there. We'll go up to a team that I think perhaps we'll split hairs on this, but the Cathedral City side, the Geisböcke, Erste FC Köln, were for me sometimes quite straining to watch. There were a lot of long, dry, goalless spells. And I understand the administrative penny pinching of Christian Keller. I'm also appreciative of his advocacy on the DFL board, for 50+1 and things of this nature. But they didn't put the greatest team on the pitch, and I think that we just got a lot of really bad football from them this year. That's not to say that Elias Skiri, whom we'll be missing already, didn't deserve his MVP award, in my opinion. And of course, an honorable mention goes to here's my prop for the evening. We miss you already. He is
Oh, yes.
We miss you, Jonas Hector.
Very good.
And Florian Kainz, the Austrian veteran, did a fabulous job at the 10 spot late on. They managed to provide some entertaining football last 5-6 matches of the season as they secured safety. But my grade is a D+. What do you think there, Rory?
I've given them a C+, actually.
Mm-hmm.
I just thought, as you very correctly alluded to, that at times they were quite a hard watch. They went through long spells of not being able to score goals. There was a period of time where they could, I think it was across 10 games, they failed to score in 7 of them, score in 5, where obviously that 5 in 10 games doesn't sound as bad when I put it like that. But when they scored 3 of them in one game, it makes you understand even more the struggles that they had. It was. And then I do also have a bit of sympathy in the fact that Baumgart obviously had Anthony Modeste not stripped from him by Dortmund because of the situation that unfolded there. And he also had Mark Uth, who was so effective for them last season, who barely played. I can't remember ever seeing his name on the team sheet, to be honest, this season. And that duo that worked so well last season were obviously not available. They brought in, Tigges, the youngster from Dortmund, and he didn't have a great impact. Very strange season for them. Yeah, they did become more entertaining, as you said, as they got towards the end of the season. Beating Hertha 5-2 was a really good game, actually, and a good performance. Such a strange one, beating Werder 7-1 as we started after the break. It was a strange one, but yeah, easily for me, Elise Skiri for the man of the season for them. Okay, moving on to Borussia Mönchengladbach, finishing as mid-table. I put as mid-table as it gets. Never in trouble in terms of relegation, but never in trouble of charging for Europe or kind of putting it up with the bigger teams. They were so inconsistent. We thought early on in the season that they might have left those tendencies behind under Farke. It never really happened. They did their usual, turning up against some of the big teams, though, beating Dortmund 4-2, standardly not losing to Bayern across the season, winning 3-2 and 1-1 and a 1-1 draw, despite the fact that they lost Jan Sommer to Bayern, still getting that win. There are a lot of quality players in that team, and to finish where they did mid-table, it's fine, but the Gladbach fans want more and they think they deserve more. Obviously, they've introduced Gerardo Seriane to the squad as head coach for next season. That looks like a good appointment for me, but he has got a lot of work to do based on the summer, but we're not looking at the summer, we're looking back. Best player for me has to be Jonas Hoffmann, just consistent performer, 12 goals, 9 assists, 31 appearances, all consistently available, standout player, cool in front of goal, no matter the situation, whether he's assisting or slotting it in. So yeah, absolutely a standout player for them. Marcus Thuram and Itakura, honourable mentions for me. Over to you, Peter, for your summary.
What was the grade for the Foles?
C for me.
C. Okay. Yeah, I go with a D. We have expressed our empathy for Gladbach fans on this podcast many times before after their third consecutive season of mid-table mediocrity. They deserve to feel hard done by after Marco Rosa's departure and also Max Ebel's departure. I don't know about Seoane. Probably looks like a fourth consecutive season of mid-table mediocrity based on the fact that they don't have all that much to spend, in the transfer market. Jonas Hoffmann, hands down, the MVP. He provided some really spectacular stuff this season, with Lars Stindl and Ko Itakura getting an honorable mention. And broadcasting from Karlsruhe, so everybody's a big Stindl fan. Happy to see him come home after the season.
Right.
Yes, but we do empathize with fans of the Fallen Elf because it's a great fan base, and they've certainly deserved more than they've gotten these past 3 seasons. That will bring us up to one of the more intriguing teams, and one that I think we're probably it's tough to grade this team because Mainz, particularly with that, I think they probably had the best January transfer window in all of German football, bringing in Ludovic Ajorque and also Andreas Hanscha-Olsen. We really expected, and talking, about our predictions, in January, February, March, we really expected them to contend for Europe. Of course, they ended up being the title spoilers when they finally decided to show up on the last day of the season. I still have to give them a B- because I believe that Bo Svensson really brought a lot out of the team. And his 3-4-3 system was an unqualified success. Ajorque was fantastic in it. As a matter of fact, I mean, when you look at the attackers and you try to select an MVP, what can you do? It's a 3-way tie between Onisiwo, Ingvarts, and Ajorque. I mean, there's you can't say that one of those guys was more important than the other. So I went ahead with Leandro Barreiro, the midfielder for MVP, because I think he was probably, together with Dominic Hardcore, they did an excellent job on that axis. The two of them did this season, and they brought the best out of Aaron Martin as well. Seeing depart. So, what are your thoughts, Rory? Do you think they needed to do better at the end of the day, or?
I gave them a B+. I thought that under Bo Svensson, they've done fantastic work again. At times this season, they were the team to beat, going on a 10-game unbeaten run, which included wins over Bayern and RB Leipzig. Obviously, the January transfer window that you've mentioned already, Peter, was really, really important, bringing in Ajorque. Fantastic impact that he had. It took him a few games to actually get the numbers in terms of the goals and assists in that sense, but you could see his impact was clear, as was Hanscha-Olsen. The bubble burst towards the end of the season, again, as you've already alluded to, but they were the title spoilers. Do they get points for that? I don't know. Do they get minus points for it? Who knows? It was a good season, very good season for them, I think. Keeping a hold of Bo Svensson, I think, is really important, really, as a head coach. Really impressive individual. Been linked with teams already, and previously. The best player, I gave it to Onisiwo, just because he's had such a lovely late blossoming in his career. It was a very hard call, as you say. Ajorque, Ingvarts, and all fantastic, but it was great to see. And his hat-trick versus Bochum was particularly good. Some really high-class finishes as well from the striker. Right, we'll move on. We're not doing too bad with time, actually. For surprisingly, we're doing well. We're working through. So on to Wolfsburg. who, for me, I've given them a C, but I kind of feel like I should maybe have gone slightly harsher. But anyway, we'll see. We'll see what Peter says in a second. Just felt like a bit of a meh season. I don't even know how to describe it really. Obviously fell short of European football. 2 seasons ago, this was a Champions League squad. So obviously coming forth and taking on Champions League football. Just at time, and when they turned up, they could cut it with some top quality sides, but also in other matches looked completely rudderless. I mean, obviously throw in the loss to Dortmund towards the end of the season, they looked completely on the beach and completely uninterested. But yeah, under Niko Kovac, they had a poor start, but then they went on a really good run, actually. 10 matches unbeaten as well, which was kickstarted by a 3-2 win over Stuttgart. High scoring wins as well. They did have that in their locker, beating Hertha, Freiburg, Bochum, and they did beat Dortmund as well. So at that time, you're looking at European football again, but it did unfortunately drop off for them, and losing to Hertha on the last day already relegated Hertha after being 1-0 up in the match early on. Yeah, I mean, just very unimpressive in that sense. Their best player for me, I've gone with Matthias Svanberg. In his debut season, I thought he looked really at ease in the Bundesliga, contributed 10 goals overall, which included 6 assists and obviously 4 goals. Looked, of real quality, provided some really nice touches in that final third. And at 24 years of age, not only is that impressive, the fact that he's come in as a young man into the league and done well, but also shows that he's got a good age profile to improve. So, yeah, I thought he was one of their better players. I'll just notably say I thought Patrick Wimmer was good as well as the Mecha boys. So, Peter, what are your thoughts on Wolfsburg?
D- is the grade. I can't help but feel that failing to secure European qualification is just unacceptable. And there was a lot of, particularly the way that they began the new calendar year. I really thought that Kovac, in my tactical column this year, there were a lot of angry rants at Niko Kovac, who, after all, was a little bit of an over-tinkerer during his stint with Bayern as well. I think that the quality in this squad really demanded much higher. German fans are not horribly disappointed that Wolfsburg missed out on Europe. I mean, we can do without the half full Volkswagen Arena for the Europa League or whatever. But
yeah,
there were so many really breakthrough performers this year. I did select Castells, who quietly together. I think probably. It's close between him, Flecken, and Kobel as the Bundesliga's best goalkeeper. Well, I guess we get to that on Monday.
Sure.
The honorable mention list is obscenely long. I mean, Yannick Gerhardt played the best season of his career. Felix Lemaitre not only eclipsed his younger, more famous brother, but is also now being linked as the potential Jude Bellingham replacement at Dortmund. Not that those two players can be compared in any way, shape, or form, but the captain, Maximilian Arnold, some great set piece work this season. Joshua Guido Vogi, who was left for dead, really came through. Of course, I had to get a plug for one of my Americans too, Kevin Paredes, who did some spectacular work off the bench. Yeah, as they mentioned at the end of the season, as Yannick Gerhardt mentioned, it was just madness that they couldn't qualify for Europe. It should have been done, and it has to be viewed as a failure. Eintracht Frankfurt is a team I expect we're not going to spend a lot of time on, because much like Gladbach, look, we talked about them on the pod a great deal this season. Much like Gladbach, motivational issues, so many players departing on freeze, and all of the chaos with Oliver Glasner this year, not necessarily needed. Makoto Hasebe, for, as Glasner himself put it in the press conference, pissing blood, earns an honorable mention, but there can be no question as to who the MVP of that team was. Obviously, it was Rando Kolomoani. Frankfurt, the SKA, get a D in my marks.
Very good. Yeah, I went with a C-, so yeah, pretty close. Yeah, exactly what you say. Players leaving on frees, the motivation. Ironically, they've improved on their position from last season, but that's Europa League concentrated, caveats thrown in there. So you can't really take much from that. Yeah, their form slightly went up towards the end of the season when they thought, bollocks, we need to get ready for the Pokal Cup final and need to be in half decent form. So for the last couple of games, they actually showed up. But yeah, ultimately, average season for Frankfurt, and Kolomoani clearly, absolutely sensational to be picked up on a free and become one of the hottest strikers in Europe as a result within one season is excellent. So yeah, all the plaudits must go to him. Obviously, not only did he score a lot, but his 11 assists, so that's 26 goal contributions. That is massive. So absolutely fair play to him. And he was there for 32 matches within the season, so consistent throughout. And also won 402 tackles. So he obviously, so he pressed really well. I think 8th highest in the league, and that's for a striker. So absolutely fantastic from him. Kamada and Götze get a bit of a shout out for me. Kamada started off the season very strongly, but I thought he dropped off. Obviously, pending knowing that he was off to probably AC Milan. But yes, we move on to Leverkusen, Bayer Leverkusen, who these were tricky to grade because of the season that unfolded ahead of them. I've gone for a B- in the end because of the fact that the second season under Seoane just did not got off to an unthinkable start, really. And the fact that they were in a relegation conversation was just unfathomable. So obviously Xabi Alonso was brought in relatively early. His impact was not immediate. Obviously, they got the first result, which I think was a 5-0 win over Union. But after that, it still took a little bit of time to get going. But they shot up the league, obviously, as they would do with the quality in their side. But obviously, based from last season when they scored 80 goals, they only scored 57 this season. So obviously, they were missing Paddy Schick. A fit and firing Paddy Schick was obviously a massive negative for them. There were some players that still didn't really get going. Asmoon, for example, still not there. Hojsek, who came in as a young striker, probably wasn't expected to score hundreds of goals, but still took a bit longer than they would have liked to him to get going. But yeah, they did ultimately do very well to get into the European places. At one point, they did go on a good run that pushed them maybe into the Champions League conversation for a game or two. But ultimately, because of RB Leipzig winning the Pokal, they've now got Europa League football for next season. And the best players, to me, I found this so difficult to choose between Frimpong and Diaby. Both exceptional seasons. Maybe Frimpong slightly more exceptional from a statistical point of view if you compare Diaby's previous season. The fact that Frimpong got 8 goals and 7 assists playing 34 matches, absolutely barrel loads of sprints and at high speed. Was absolutely outstanding. So I'd just about maybe give it to Frimpong. Also maybe an honourable mention to Hincapié because I thought he was pretty good. So Peter, your summary on Leverkusen before moving on.
Absolutely. Werkself get an A. You mentioned the Patrick Schick injury and also the Florian Wirtz injury was crucial. So Xabi, he doesn't get it. I mean, once he got Wirtz back, it was a different team. Frimpong gets the MVP award based on the fact that he really did. I mean, he came forward and operated as a winger and kept this team afloat through the dark times. I wish I could give it to Wirtz. He was fantastic when he did come back, but he played too few matches. I mean, he only played half the season. So, yes, they get an A for getting that, well, what is now confirmed to be an Europa League place after Frankfurt's loss in the Pokal. And we'll move up to our other Europa League team here, and that is, of course, SC Freiburg, a team that was, I've referred to as a national treasure in this podcast, and I've gushed all over them. So, I mean, I don't need to necessarily repeat myself. Obviously, they get an A, even if they did miss out on Champions League qualification. And yeah, it's tempting to give the MVP to Grigoric or perhaps Mark Flecken, but it has to be Grifo, our Italian from Pforzheim, who put together the best season of his career and remains one of the best set piece artists in German football. Also, kind of a natural treasure. So it's not lots of nice Italians in Pforzheim. It's not far from where I make my home base here in Germany, a town I'm familiar with. And yes, lots of pictures of Vincenzo in Pforzheim pizzerias that play Eros Ramazzotti constantly. So I'm very, very happy that he put together the best season of his career.
Yeah, easy A for me. And yeah, I just went with Grifo for best player. Honourable mention to Flecken. I thought Ritsu Doan had a pretty good season overall, as well as a good
start. Back in German football, yeah.
Yeah, absolutely great to have him back. Just that maybe that confidence they just lost towards the end of the season with the horrible loss to Leipzig in the semi-final of the Pokal did knock them a bit too much. But yeah, it was a fantastic season, consistently improving. So yeah, absolutely. They're been excellent for the Bundesliga, moving up one spot to a historic Champions League and fourth placed finish for Union Berlin. Absolute fairy tale stuff. Really, for the Berlin side, first ever rendition of Champions League football. They've improved by one place from last season, getting that all important. Well, if you say it, all important. Champions League spot, just amazing to say. To keep on saying it under Urs Fischer, playing that counter-attacking style of football, fantastic defensive record as well. A+ for me. Yeah, they did it. And comically, they're almost in a title race for 2/3 of the season-ish. Or certainly the media outlets of the Bundesliga would make you want to feel that, certainly. And, they just were outstanding and leading the Bundesliga X amount of months into the season as well. Just fantastic to see. Got over the line eventually, obviously, with that win on the last day from the Khedira goal, which was excellent to see. The best player was a tricky one for me, but I felt like I couldn't not give it to a defender, considering. So I went with Danilo Doecki, the Dutchman. It was a really good acquisition, adding that steel to the back line, making them very hard to beat and to score against. Also really important at the other end of the pitch, scoring 5 goals. And providing an assist with a success pass rate of 85.9%, the best of his side, obviously occupying the ball really well and advancing it. So, yeah, I thought he was absolutely excellent, and you can't not give a shout out to good old Geraldo Becker and Kevin Perrins. So, yeah, over to you, Peter.
A+ for me as well, obviously, even if it wasn't always the most exciting football. Becker is, of course, the MVP. He was the offense. There was no offense without him. Interesting that you picked a defender. I think Doecki is a very worthy choice as well. I wanted to give it to Rani Khedira so badly for winning that midfield all season and scoring that crucial goal, but one can't deny Becker at the end of the day. We move into top three now, of course, with the other East German side. This one, the more plastic one, RB Leipzig, not necessarily a team Germans are keen to talk about very much. It was an inconsistent season for them. They had hard luck with the Nkunku injury, of course, but lots of underachieving from the likes of Timo Werner and Andre Silva. I give them a B minus based on the fact that they got the job done and finished third. And of course, they got their second straight Pokal victory as well. Marco Rosa didn't, or Max Eberle for that matter, didn't have to work terribly hard to whip this club into shape. All the pieces were there. Soboslai is my MVP. He was the most consistent performer, although Danny Olmo, when he was healthy, was the most exciting to watch.
Yep.
And Xaver Schlager, of course, did an excellent job in midfield as well, but was not healthy for the entire season.
Yeah, agreed. I've gone with the B for Leipzig. Ironically, them somehow only just finishing 5 points off the title race is another one that they just kind of somehow snuck up there to finish third in the end with 20 wins. 64 goals makes me feel like they left a lot out there, though. For me, for Leipzig, with obviously the Nkunku injury didn't help, but you feel like a fit and firing Andre Silva of the Frankfurt-like and Werner, previous RB Leipzig version, there'd be a lot more goals in that team. They timed it well in the end, didn't they? And they got on a good run, which obviously fell in line with Nkunku coming back to full fitness, and the fact that they didn't risk him the second time around. And as Nkunku he's a superstar, and the fact that he'll be well missed from the Bundesliga, I thought I'd better give him the RB Leipzig best player. The fact that he's still got the joint top goal scorer award, so 16 goals in 25 appearances plus 4 assists. Like that is silly going, considering the amount of contributions and the amount of time that he played. Szoboszlai, definitely an honourable mention in that sense. And moving on to second place and runners-up of the Bundesliga this season, being Borussia Dortmund, I've given them a B+ for a grade. I again found this one challenging to grade because, of course, they were one game from Bundesliga glory and the title. Falling just short in the last game against Mainz. We all know the story by now. Of course, they were dealt a hammer blow at the start of the season in the sense of Sebastian Haller's diagnosis, and that he had to, miss a great proportion of the season. They had to bring in a striker, and they went with Anthony Modeste. And based on the season before, a lot of people were like, "Oh, it's a great signing," but it didn't work out, unfortunately. And obviously, as a result, it meant that Dortmund's form was actually quite patchy. Very patchy. In fact, the first half of the season up until the World Cup and winter break. Obviously, when we come back, we see a different Dortmund side firing on all cylinders, 10 unbeaten, winning 9 of them. Their home form was electric. Daniel Marlin, Adeyemi, both coming to the fore at important times. Julian Brandt's form at times is absolutely excellent. Obviously, Jude Bellingham has to get a large mention because he is just one of those rare players and was sensational for me. A leader on the pitch at that age is hard to come by. Obviously, now moving on to Real Madrid and pastures new for a large fee. Scored 8 goals and 4 assists over 31 matches. 482 won tackles and covered over 325 kilometers in that midfield. Absolutely tireless. But the caveat is, of course, that they messed up at the end of the season, losing points to Stuttgart and Bochum, and then eventually Mainz. They were handed a couple of opportunities along the way, but came up short in a couple of really big moments. So that's my little summary of Dortmund. So over to you, Pierre, to finish that one up.
A minus for Dortmund. I believe they did everything correct but win the title. Let's not forget they were in 6th place as the new calendar year began. You mentioned the Sebastian Haller hammer blow. I think Edin Terzic will go down as just a fantastic appointment. Bringing him back really made a huge difference, and he was able to bring. I mean, to select an MVP of this squad, it's impossible if you look at the score sheets. It's simply impossible. Everyone was contributing. Julian Brandt is my vote for it. I think that the German international finally matured into the best version of himself at the age of 27, I believe it is now, and was just absolutely blew everybody away. Many who had, including myself, who had practically given up on him. So a late career resurgence for him. I think he carried the team through some of its more challenging phases, right up to those 3 assists he collected in the Wolfsburg shellacking that put them back, that allowed them to make a statement. They're wonderfully positioned. They have a great future next year. You mentioned Bellingham. The article that I wrote on him the other day, that is 103 million as a base transfer fee, which can rise up to 130 million with bonus payments. They did what they needed to do, according to our analysis, in liquidating Jude Bellingham, as tough as it was. And look, that's I mean, the transfer window that they're going to have this summer. Stay tuned. I mean, they are going to, and they already have a great team in all areas, in absolutely all areas. So this is, I would consider them early favorites to take next year's Bundesliga, and that is because, despite the fact that FC Bayern München won their 11th consecutive title, one cannot help but give them a C- grade for a season that was just full of administrative incoherence.
Mm-hmm.
And I think that this year, Bayern, they almost proved to me that they have just absolutely no shame, no core values. And we saw that when it began with the Toni Topalovic sacking over Manuel Neuer. That was at Julian Nagelsmann's behest. Then they sacked Nagelsmann. Then they sacked Kahn and Salihamidzic, which... Yep. The German editorial pages have been relatively friendly to Bayern, saying this has to be done based on the expectations that the mighty German giants have. But the more editorials I read, the more I think to myself, Kahn and Salihamidzic put in a lot of dog work for this club before finally getting their promotions. And to have them just sort of pitch to the wind like this so that you can bring back Karl-Heinz Rummenigge. I mean, Bayern, as you know, Germans are schizophrenic. We don't have we throw cognitive dissonance out the window when it comes to Bayern are very much reviled in the league. But when it comes Champions League time, they are proud representatives of our country. But they are more reviled now than ever, particularly considering the fact that while Kahn and Salihamidzic may have had their administrative competency issues, they were generally well-liked personalities. And it was thought that they could take off some of the stain of Rummenigge and Hoeneß, who were, no shame, no loyalty. A lot of really bad football this season as well. For me, the MVP, the best consistent performer I found was De Ligt. Actually, I think that he was best on both sides of the ball. Mm-hmm. Everybody else really. And of course, this was an odd season. It was a World Cup season, so you had players came back injured, or in the case of Musiala, came back with confidence issues or something like this. But Yeah, and I wish I could give it to Chupo, but I mean, he was just hurt too often towards the end. But that's my long German take on them, and we ran a little bit over with it, but I think it was important to note this. So, Rory, I take it to you to take us home.
Yeah, absolutely. I went with a B- for Bayern. It was a strange one to give a league winner a B- score, but yeah, you've covered it really, really clearly, Peter. From an administrative point of view, it was a mess. Not foregoing the obviously the Mane Sane slap. Was it those two?
Yes.
Yeah. So long ago now. Yeah. And yeah, I mean, after the first 3 games of the season, when they scored 15 goals, you're thinking, okay, wow, they mean business this season. But yeah, the season would not unfold in that vein at all. Yeah, they went hot and cold at times. They went on a good run of 13 unbeaten that got them back up to the top of the table. But still, the football was quite hard to watch after Tuchel came in, and even before. And so, yeah, I found this difficult to choose from a best player. And De Ligt was on my list, so I'd probably happily go for him. So, yeah, very strange one. But ultimately, they did the job on the last day, edging past Cologne. Obviously, the game before being outclassed by RB Leipzig quite clearly. So, yeah, very strange one to finish off with. But that is our summary of the Bundesliga season 2022-23. Sorry,
Bayern.
My grade.
Oh no, your grade I got. Your MVP.
Oh, sorry, my MVP. I'm going for De Ligt as well.
Okay.
I felt that was a good choice. Yeah, as you say, on the ball and off the ball. Obviously, their defensive record was the joint best with Union's, and yeah, I thought he was a consistent player for Bayern overall. So yeah, absolutely deserved in that sense. So yeah, thank you to everyone that's watched this evening, and thank you for watching or listening to the podcast. Subsequently, we have one final show to go this season. It's been a great pleasure to cover the Bundesliga this season in what's felt like an absolutely epically long one. So on Monday evening, we're going to have a bit of fun, kick back and do an awards evening show. Runa will be joining us as well. Mark should be back. So it'd be really enjoyable to just have a bit of a laugh and kind of look back at some of the highlights of the season in less tactical depth than perhaps we've done tonight. So I hope you can join us on Monday. Before we sign out, obviously, please do smash a like on this video. Comment subsequently in the comment section if you want to raise anything, and we'll try and get back to you. Subscribe to the channel, of course. You can find all the usuals for Over the Bar on Twitter at Over the Bar FB and Extra, and go to the website, which is www.otbfootball.net. So yeah, it's been a pleasure this evening, one and all. Peter, thank you as ever, and we shall see you on Monday evening.